Hey everybody, welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got another Transformers review coming your way. This time around we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Legacy Core Class Decepticon Skywarp. So as we always do, let's go ahead and take a look at that packaging first, and you can see right up at the top you've got that nice Skywarp artwork. You've got Transformers Legacy up at the top, there's your big gaping hole. Coming down here you got that Legacy logo, Skywarp Transformers artwork on the side. On the back you have those product shots, and you have all your warnings, and you have your sad baby there. On this side you have some nice artwork as well. You can see he is a core class, and on the bottom you have some additional information. So that is it for the packaging. Let's go ahead and see what came inside that box. Behold, laid out here before you is everything that came inside that box, and as is typical with the core class, it's not a lot. Well, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll start right over here with your little sheet of warnings. And you also get your instruction booklet, and that leaves you with Skywarp himself and his one accessory. So let's go ahead and bring that accessory in and take a look at it. And yeah, it's kind of cool actually for a core class figure. There's not a lot going on here, but it's funky. I like the design, I like the paint apps on this, and it does have blast effect compatibility. So as far as core class figures go, this has just about everything you could possibly want. So yeah, as far as that detail goes, there you go. That's what it looks like from the top, and down here on the bottom. If you look even inside here, you do have some sculpt work inside those areas as well. So yeah, not a lot going on with this, but like we said earlier, it is blast effect compatible, so you can bring in a blast effect of your choosing, and you could plug it in, and you could do what you want to do with it. You could throw it on the back as well if you choose to do so. So it's entirely up to you. You could bring in another one and have something like that going on. And this is one of my personal favorites. I just like this kind of electric blue, almost like an electrical discharge coming out of this whatever it is. So there you go. All right, so that is it for the accessories. Let's go ahead and bring Skywarp in and take a look at his details. Here he is, the bot we've all been waiting to see. This is the core class Skywarp. So let's bring him in and take a look at those details, and we'll start right up here with that head sculpt. And I like this mold. Now this is a remold of the Kingdom Starscream core class, but I really like what they've done here with the paint apps and just the overall color selection for this figure. I think he looks really good. I love that silver face, and I want to be careful about not bringing him too close because I don't want to lose focus, but I really like the paint, the silver face. You can see those little beady red eyes in there. The silver cowls look good, and then out here on the chest, all this silver, just it makes him pop. It absolutely makes him look really good, and in my opinion, I think this is a better looking figure than the core class Starscream is. But yeah, so let's move on down. And you can see there's not a lot going on as far as paint in that mid and lower section of the body, but you do have some good details, good sculpt work in there. And then you come down to those purple feet and the insides of the legs. You've got a little bit of hollow going on, but they're not the worst I've ever seen, and especially when you consider the fact that this is a core class, I'm not going to sweat it too much at all. And then coming around to the side here. Now, on my copy, just as a heads up, this doesn't lock into place like it should. This side locks in just fine, but for whatever reason this one doesn't. So if I'm moving this around, apologies, just letting you know what's going on. But moving around to the side here, you can see you've got some folded up wings and a little bit of detail in those legs. And then coming around here, looking up under the chest, pretty good overall look, I think. You know, he's not really hollow, and he's solid all the way through here, which is nice. You've got a little bit of detail on those wings, nothing major, but a little bit. And then coming over here to those arms, looking up underneath, you can see that ball joint. I'm not the biggest fan of ball joints on major joints, if you will, shoulders, hips, stuff like that. I understand why they do it in the core class, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. And then you come down to those hands. Really like the purple that they chose here. This looks good. And then on the arms right here on the shoulders, you do have 3mm ports for those null rays. Now, he does not come with null rays, but if you wanted to, you could put Starscream's null rays on there, or if you have a 3D printer, you could print off your own set, and they'll fit in there just fine. Now, moving around to the back, just like Starscream, I think this is a good-looking Seeker figure, even from the back, especially considering that this is a core class figure. He just looks good. This just captures the Seeker look. That is a undeniable silhouette, if you will. Now, as far as articulation goes, it's not too bad, really. Now, you don't get a whole lot on the head, so you're not going to get any wiggle. You're not going to really get any up and down. You're going to be able to turn that head, and you are going to do a full 360 on that if you want, and you are going to turn it 180 degrees for the transformation anyway. So at least you have the ability to turn that head. You just unfortunately can't look up or down or give him quizzical looks. So on those shoulders, they're on those ball joints. They will come directly up that far, and then you can go all the way around if you choose to do so. And then on those elbows, you get 90 degrees of bend, and then because they're on ball joints, you can take those all the way around as well. You don't get anything at the waist, but coming down here to those legs, you get a little bit of thigh rotation in and out. They're on ball joints as well, so you do get a little bit of a few degrees of rotation on that. And then if you bring them out for the splits, you get about that far on the splits, so not quite a full split, but still better than what you're going to need on a figure this size. Kicking forward, you can kick him forward that far. Kicking backward, you can get him that far before he starts running into himself back here. And then at that knee, you're going to get just under 90 degrees. So you don't have anything down here at the feet. Those feet are just molded where they are designed to be spread apart a little bit like that. So when you set him up, he's going to have a little bit of a spread on that stand. And it's pretty natural. And the guy's fairly stable. He can get a little top heavy on you, so it doesn't take a whole lot to knock him over. But as long as you're careful with the posing, and you do have the ability to actually kind of chicken leg those wings, or chicken leg those legs a little bit, so you can push those knees back, and that helps quite a bit with stability too. So that way you get more of his upper body leaning forward to give him a better sense of balance. All right, so that is it for the details and the articulation. So what we will do now is we'll throw his accessory on and we'll take a look at him from there. And here we see Skywarp with his accessory in his hand. And as you can see, we've got a couple of blast effects on there. And he does have that 3mm port on his back where you can use a flight stand. Now, due to this figure's limitations as far as the overall size and articulation goes, it's not the most conducive thing to giving you a dynamic pose, but it's definitely there if you want to use it. And if you have a more advanced flight stand that gives you better range of motion and stability than this one, then you can certainly take advantage of it if you choose to do so. But yeah, this is an idea of something that you can do. And this accessory does have those 3mm pegs, so you could plug it right in to those shoulder ports if you wanted to use it in that fashion instead of having him hold it in his hand. And you could plug it in back here for weapon storage if you choose to do so as well. And there's nothing at all that's saying that you can't bring in the accessory from another core class figure, say maybe a core class Iguanus, and plug that into his other hand so he's dual wielding some weird looking weapons and, you know, creating some kind of havoc wherever he is. So yeah, just to give you an idea here, this is something that you can do, and yeah, just have fun with the guy. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get him in his alt mode and we'll take a look at him there. You know, I've got to say that the core class line in general has its faults, but in this circumstance, in my opinion, they've made a really good looking alt mode here. This is a good looking jet mode. Barring the obvious arms hanging on the bottom, this is nice. I really do like this. I liked it in Starscream, and I like it even more here in Skywarp. But let's go ahead and bring him in and look at those details. We're going to start right up here at the front. Now, I've left his accessory on because, well, I mean, it's just one accessory and it's pretty obvious, so we're not going to have a separate segment involving that, but you can see what it does. There's just a 3mm port up underneath the nose cone here that plugs right in. So you kind of get the idea there, and you can plug your blast effect in right there and make it look like he's firing something from that. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way so we can look at the rest of the details here. And we'll start right up here with that cockpit. There's nothing amazing here. You know, it's just that yellowish orange paint, but it looks pretty good. Now, everything else color-wise looks really good on this figure. These purples and blacks and these silvers just really make this guy pop. He looks so good. And looking at those wings, you can see that Decepticon symbol right there. And you've got good panel lines in there. Now you do have this big obvious transformation pin, but I can overlook it. Not that big of a deal. And then coming up here underneath, right, there's those arms, and then you have the faux cockpit right there. But even these, you know, the way they've designed them, it almost looks like VTOL or vertical takeoff and landing thrusters. So I can buy into this. No big deal at all. And even right up here, you know, they cleaned it up pretty good and being all black. You flip that head around and you make that face disappear. And then you've got those cowls, and those intakes just look really good. Coming around to the back. Good detail there. You know, you've got these feet hanging off the back, and those don't look exactly right. It would have been nice if they could have done something with the feet back there, but keeping in mind that this is a core class price point, I'm not going to sweat this at all. I think it looks pretty good. And then coming around to this side, it looks suspiciously like the other side. How about that for some symmetry? And you do, much like the Starscream, there's those 3mm ports. You can throw some null rays on there, whether they be Starscreams or whether you want to print them off yourself or any other array of weapons that have 3mm pegs. So from the top, he just looks absolutely sublime. Looks so good. And then from the bottom, he doesn't completely fall apart, but yeah, there's a robot there, no doubt about it. But again, emphasizing the fact that we're talking about a core class figure here. Job well done. All right, so that is Skywarp in his alt mode. So what we'll do now is we'll bring in some comparisons and we'll see how he looks compared to some other figures out there. So for our first alt mode comparison, I figured I would start with the most relevant. And this is his mold mate. This is the Kingdom core class Starscream. So you can see, other than different colors of plastic and different paint applications, they're exactly the same thing. Now, Starscream came with a different set of accessories. He came with those null rays instead of the whatever that is. But as far as geometry goes, these two are exactly the same thing. But yeah, I like the Skywarp coloration better. Maintaining the Starscream comparison theme, this is the Studio Series Starscream figure. Moving right along, we have a Skywarp to Skywarp comparison for you. So on the left, of course, is that little core class Skywarp, and on the right is the Combiner Wars Leader class Skywarp, so you can see how those two guys look together. Here we see Skywarp next to one of his Transformers Legacy Wavemates. This is the Deluxe class Kickback. Next up, here we see Skywarp with his Transformers Legacy Core Class Wavemates. So on the left you have the Core Class Hot Rod, and on the right you have the Core Class Iguanus. So you can see how he stacks up to those two Wavemates. And for our final alt mode comparison, here you see the Core Class Skywarp next to what is left of my G1 Skywarp that I had as a kid. No, he doesn't have front landing gear. No, he doesn't have wings. However, I do have his null rays, and I think they double up looking pretty good as some sweet rockets on the side. So there you go. And just like that, the alt mode comparisons are over. Let's go ahead and get him back into his bot mode and do some comparisons there. For our first bot mode comparison, here we see Skywarp next to his mold mate. This is the core class Starscream that we got from the War for Cybertron Kingdom line. Next up, for another Starscream comparison, this is the Studio Series Starscream figure. For a Transformers Legacy comparison, here we see him next to the Deluxe Class Insecticon Kickback. For our next comparison, here we see the Core Class Skywarp next to a couple of his fellow Core Class Wavemates from the Legacy line. On the left, you have the Legacy Decepticon Iguanus, and on the right, you have the Legacy, also the Kingdom, Core Class Autobot Hot Rod. And now we'll take a leap from those core class comparisons and we'll do a leader class comparison. This is the leader class Combiner Wars Skywarp, and as you can see, there is a pretty significant size difference between these two fellows. And last, but certainly not least, this is our final bot mode comparison, and of course the core class Skywarp is on the left, and on the right is what remains of my poor G1 Skywarp. He saw a lot of action, and he's got the scars to prove it. And yeah, he's a little loose in the chest. But yeah, he was well loved. So there you go. That's going to do it for the comparisons. Let's go ahead and get into those final thoughts. You know, I've got to say, in the grand scheme of things, for being a core class figure, this really isn't a bad figure at all. It's a pretty good mold, and I think that the paint applications that they put on here really make it pop. And he looks good in both of his modes. So overall, I think this is a good little figure. But let's go ahead and dive into that a little bit, and we'll start with aesthetics, as we always do. I think in both modes, he looks the part. This is Skywarp through and through. Great coloring on this guy between the molded plastic colors and the painted colors. The overall mold itself, he looks good in his bot mode. He looks really good in his jet mode. So no major complaints whatsoever on the overall look when it comes to this little core class figure. You know, if anything, I would say maybe, you know, we could have had a little bit more paint in those legs maybe, or in that crotch area, just something to kind of differentiate all that black that's going on in the lower part of the body. But for the most part, he looks great. I have no real complaints at all, and it is just an added bonus that the alt mode looks good in this mold as well. So I'm going to give this guy a 9 out of 10 on aesthetics. Now, moving on to the articulation, this is probably, in my opinion, his weakest point. You can get him in the poses that you need to get him in. You can, you know, definitely have some nice dynamic action going on, but you are going to be limited in certain areas. I would have liked to have seen more range of motion in that head, in the thighs, in the knees, and then just motion, period, of any kind would have been welcome in the feet. I know those feet they're molded in, they're affixed, so they're meant to have kind of that spread leg stance. But, you know, even just a little bit of ankle tilt, maybe even not any up or down, but just some ankle tilt would have gone a long way in this figure. So his articulation is there, but it's going to leave you wanting. So I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 on articulation. Moving on to his accessories. He only comes with the one accessory, but it's a cool one. I'm not entirely sure what it is. I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to do. But the paint looks good. The fact that it's got blast effect compatibility and you could plug it onto his body in a few different ways goes a long way. Plus, it looks really cool in the jet mode, hanging underneath that nose, where you've got that weapon of whatever it is right underneath the nose cone that you can shoot somebody out of the sky with. So I think for the accessories, it's good. But man, why didn't he come with null rays? You know, just a odd point there. But I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 on accessories. I think the one that he came with is pretty cool, but I really would have liked to have had those null rays either in addition to or instead of. Moving on to quality. On my copy in particular, this one right here, the only issue that I have is the fin, the tail fins on his left foot. So actually coming right around right here. So they're just loose. They don't lock into his leg. So there's two positions when you go through the transformation where there's just tiny tabs and slots, and it kind of locks those in position. Those don't lock. It's not detrimental in any way, but they certainly don't feel as solid and as well made as the fins on the right side. I don't know if I'm verbalizing that correctly, but my fins are loose. Let's put it that way. Other than that, everything looks good. The paint looks good. No sculpting defects. He came with everything that he was supposed to. The joints are nice and tight, which is a welcome change. I can't say that for his wave mates, Hot Rod or Iguanus. Both of those guys have some loose joints. But Skywarp here has tight joints everywhere, so I do appreciate that. So quality, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 just simply because that left fin just feels like a miss. I don't know how it got out of the factory that way. Moving on to our final bullet, which is overall value. Buyer beware. Do some comparative shopping. I said this in the Iguanus review, and I'm going to say it here. Walmart and Target are my two primary retailers in North America. Both of the retailers are carrying this core class wave now. However, they have distinctly different prices. So Walmart is actually the more expensive of the two. So I actually picked Skywarp up at Target. Target was actually $2 less than Walmart was. So at Target, on the shelf, this guy is $10 US, $9.99. At Walmart, he's $11.99 or 12 US dollars. So definitely do your comparative shopping there and find the best price on these figures. But I think for the price that I paid, which was $10 at Target off the shelf, I think he's a pretty good value. This is a fun mold. He's a fun figure to play with. Transformation is pretty cool. He looks good in both of his modes. And he just captures that essence of Skywarp. So this is definitely one of those pocket toys. You can take him anywhere and play with him and, you know, do some kind of imaginative play, or just have him on your shelf, and he looks good. So for the overall score, out of a possible 50 points, the Transformers Legacy Core Class Skywarp, I'm giving him 41 out of 50, which equates to an 82%. So I'm going to be able to easily give this guy a recommendation. I think if you already have the Kingdom Core Class Starscream, you know what you're getting into here, and I think we all knew this was coming, right? There's at some point going to be a Core Class Thundercracker coming out as well, because you have to have the Seeker trio. But yeah, he looks good, and I think he's going to be a lot of fun. I don't have any hesitation whatsoever telling you to pick this guy up and add him to your collection if you already collected the other Core Class figures. So with that, that's going to wrap up the review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got some good information. If you haven't already done so, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. And if you have any thoughts, feel free to share them. Leave some comments. Let us know what you think about the page, what you think about this review, or life in general. So until we see you guys in the next review, take care.